the sun-scorched plains of Troy, where the Scamander River wound through fertile fields and towering walls rose defiantly against the backdrop of Mount Ida, bore witness to a conflict that would echo through the ages. Its origin shrouded in myth yet grounded in the archaeological traces of a late Bronze Age city, excavated at Hisarlik in modern Turkey. In 1870, Heinrich Schliemann Spade uncovered the layered ruins of Troy, revealing 9 distinct settlements stacked atop one another, with Troy VI dated to approximately 1200 BCE through radiocarbon analysis, bearing signs of violent destruction, charred timbers, scattered arrowheads, and collapsed fortifications that align hauntingly with the epic tale of the Trojan War, the Iliad, attributed to the poet Homer, whose historicity remains debated among scholars like Martin West and Gregory Nagy. Emerges not as a factual chronicle but as a poetic tapestry weaving together oral traditions, heroic ideals, and the cultural memory of a Mycenaean world teetering on the edge of collapse. This epic, likely composed in the 8th century BCE based on linguistic analysis of its dactylic hexameter, unfolds over a mere 51 days in the 10th year of a protracted siege. Yet its scope encompasses the full spectrum of human emotion: wrath, honor, grief, and redemption set against the backdrop of a war sparked by the abduction of Helen, wife of Menelaus, by the Trojan prince Paris. The narrative, preserved in manuscripts like the 10th century Venetus A, draws from a rich oral tradition, with formulaic epithets like swift-footed Achilles and Hector, tamer of horses, reflecting the mnemonic devices of bards who performed these tales for aristocratic audiences. Archaeological evidence, such as the Mycenaean palace complexes at Pylos and Mycenae, with their cyclopean walls and linear B tablets detailing administrative records, suggests a warrior society where honor and Clio's glory drove men to deeds of valor, much like those depicted in the poem. Yet, the Iliad transcends its historical roots, offering a meditation on mortality and the divine machinations of gods like Zeus, Athena, and Apollo, whose interventions shaped the battlefield as much as the mortal heroes themselves. The story begins with a quarrel, not over Helen, but between Achilles, the greatest Achaean warrior, and Agamemnon, leader of the Greek coalition, over the spoils of war, a dispute rooted in the societal norms of gift exchange and status, as evidenced by the bronze tripods and gold talents found in Mycenaean shaft graves. This opening conflict sets the stage for a narrative that explores the consequences of pride, the fragility of alliances, and the inexorable pull of fate, as the Greeks and Trojans clash beneath the shadow of Troy's impregnable walls. The origins of the Trojan War, as recounted in the Iliad, are steeped in a blend of myth and historical plausibility, with the casus belli Helen's abduction serving as a narrative catalyst, rather than a verifiable event. Though Hittite texts like the Ahiyawa correspondence hint at Achaean-Trojan interactions. In the late Bronze Age, the epic's early books focus on the Achaean camp, where Agamemnon's decision to seize Briseis, Achilles' war prize, ignites the wrath that defines the poem's opening line. Sing, goddess, of the rage of Achilles. This rage, a central theme, reflects the heroic code where honor is paramount, as seen in the archaeological record of Mycenaean warrior burials, where grave goods like boar's tusk helmets and bronze swords signify status and martial prowess. The Achaean coalition, comprising contingents from Mycenae, Sparta, Pylos, and Ithaca, mirrors the political fragmentation of the Mycenaean world, where regional palaces, as excavated at Turns with its frescoed halls, operated as independent yet allied centers of power. The Iliad's catalog of ships in Book 2, listing 29 contingents and over 1,000 vessels, may exaggerate but reflects a memory of large-scale maritime expeditions, possibly corroborated by linear B tablets recording chariot and naval resources. Meanwhile, Troy's urban sophistication, with its sloping walls and monumental gates uncovered by Schliemann and later Wilhelm Dörpfeld, suggests a wealthy city benefiting from its strategic position on trade routes. linking the Aegean to the Black Sea, as evidenced by imported Mycenaean pottery and Anatolian seals found in Troy VI and Via layers. The Trojans, led by King Priam and his son Hector, are portrayed as defenders of a civilized polity, their society structured around family and duty, contrasting with the Achaeans' fractious alliance. The gods, omnipresent in the narrative, intervene with human-like passions, Athena bolstering the Greeks, Apollo protecting the Trojans, reflecting a religious worldview where divine and mortal spheres intertwine. A belief system echoed in Mycenaean sanctuaries like the Room of the Fresco at Mycenae, where votive offerings to deities were common. As the Achaeans suffer setbacks, including a plague sent by Apollo, possibly a poetic reflection of disease outbreaks. Documented in Hittite records, Achilles withdraws from battle, his absence exposing the fragility of the Greek effort and setting the stage for the escalating conflict. The social organization of the Achaean and Trojan societies, as depicted in the Iliad, reveals a complex interplay of hierarchy, kinship, and obligation rooted in the archaeological realities of the Late Bronze Age. The Achaean camp, sprawling along the Trojan shore, is a microcosm of Mycenaean society, with its Wainax king like Agamemnon wielding authority over subordinate leaders, yet constantly negotiating power through assemblies and gift-giving, as seen in the redistribution of spoils like tripods and captives. Excavations of Mycenae's grave Circle A, with its gold masks and inlaid daggers, underscore the wealth and status of these elites, whose authority rested on martial success and divine favor. The Trojans, by contrast, are depicted as a more centralized polity, with Priam's palace potentially mirrored by the multi-roomed structures of Troy VI, serving as the heart of a city-state where family ties, as seen in Hector's devotion to his wife Andromache and son Astyanax, anchors social cohesion. The epic's portrayal of women, from Helen's ambiguous agency to Hecuba's maternal grief, reflects their roles as both catalysts and victims of conflict. A dynamic paralleled in Mycenaean frescoes depicting women in ritual contexts. The Iliad's detailed descriptions of material culture, bronze armor, chariots, and inlaid shields find parallels in artifacts like the Dendra panoply, a full-body bronze armor dated to 1400 BCE, and the Turin shield frescoes, which depict the warrior gear central to Homeric combat. Trade relationships, too, are woven into the narrative, with Troy's wealth derived from its control of the Hellespont, a conduit for tin, amber, and lapis lazuli, as evidenced by finds of Baltic amber beads in Troyvia. The epic's emphasis on feasting, as in Agamemnon's reconciliation attempt with Achilles, mirrors Mycenaean communal practices, with large hearths and ceramic assemblages at Pylos indicating lavish banquets. As the war grinds on, the narrative shifts to the battlefield, where single combats such as Menelaus versus Paris highlight the heroic ideal. Yet the massed infantry clashes described in book 4 suggest a transition to larger-scale warfare, possibly reflecting late Bronze Age military reforms. The economic systems underpinning the Trojan War, as depicted in the Iliad, are deeply tied to the material wealth and trade networks of the Late Bronze Age, with archaeological evidence illuminating the epic's backdrop. Troy's strategic location facilitated control over maritime trade, as seen in the ceramic evidence of Mycenaean, Cypriot, and Anatolian wares in Troy VI and Via, pointing to a thriving exchange network. The Achaeans, reliant on plunder and tribute, amassed wealth through raids, a practice documented in linear B tablets from Pylos listing captives and resources. The Iliad's descriptions of ransom, such as Priam's offer of gold and bronze for Hector's body, reflect a gift economy where prestige goods circulated among elites, a system corroborated by the Ulubiran shipwreck off Turkey, dated to 1300 BCE, which carried ingots, ivory, and glass beads. The epics focus on craftsmanship, as in Hephaestus' forging of Achilles' divine armor, mirrors the technical sophistication of Mycenaean metalwork, with inlaid Niello daggers and gold diadems from shaft graves showcasing advanced techniques. Agricultural surplus, too, sustain both sides. With the Trojan plains' fertility described in the epic as rich in grain, and horses supported by paleoethnobotanical studies of carbonized wheat and barley from Hisarlik. The economic strain of a decade-long siege, while likely exaggerated, finds echoes in Hittite texts lamenting resource shortages during conflicts. As the narrative progresses, the Achaeans' fortunes wane without Achilles, whose sulking in his tent underscores the tension between individual heroism and collective effort, a theme resonant with the decentralized power structures of Mycenaean palaces. The Trojans, emboldened by Hector's leadership, pushed back, their sorties enabled by alliances with neighboring peoples like the Lycians, whose presence in the epic aligns with Hittite records of Lucca warriors. The religious beliefs and burial practices of the Iliad's world are vividly portrayed, blending poetic imagination with archaeological evidence of late Bronze Age spirituality. The epic's gods, anthropomorphic yet capricious, reflect a polytheistic worldview where rituals and sacrifices, like Agamemnon's offering to appease Apollo, were central to maintaining divine favor, a practice evidenced by votive figurines and altars at Mycenaean sanctuaries like Philocope. Burial customs, a key focus of the narrative, are detailed in the funerals of Patroclus and Hector, where cremation and mound construction mirror Mycenaean tholos tombs and Trojan burial mounds, with Troy via yielding cremation urns and grave goods. The Iliad's emphasis on funerary rites, Patroclus' pyre adorned with locks of hair, and sacrificed animals parallels the rich offerings in grave circle B at Mycenae, including horses and jewelry. Divination, as when Calchas interprets the plague's cause, reflects practices attested in linear B tablets mentioning priests and oracles. The epic's portrayal of fate, with Zeus weighing the destinies of Achilles and Hector on golden scales, underscores a worldview where human agency is constrained by divine will, a concept echoed in Hittite texts invoking storm gods to determine battle outcomes. As the war intensifies, the narrative explores the emotional toll of loss, with Achilles' grief for Patroclus driving his return to battle, a moment that shifts the tide and foreshadows the tragic climax of Hector's death. The military organization and warfare depicted in the Iliad blend heroic duels with mass combat, reflecting both the poetic idealization of single combat and the archaeological evidence of organized warfare in the late Bronze Age. The Achaean and Trojan armies, equipped with bronze spears, shields, and chariots, align with finds like the Knossos linear B tablets listing chariot units and the Dendra armor, which suggests heavy infantry tactics. The epic's vivid battle scenes Hector's charge against the Achaean ships. Diomedes Aristia emphasize individual prowess, yet the mass formations described in Book 13 point to disciplined units, possibly corroborated by Hittite reliefs depicting ranked soldiers. Fortifications play a central role, with Troy's walls, described as divinely built, mirroring the Cyclopean masonry of Mycenae and the sloping ramparts of Troy VI, designed to withstand sieges. The Achaeans' palisade and trench, constructed in Book 7, reflect practical siege tactics, supported by stratigraphic evidence of defensive ditches at Hisarlik. The Iliad's focus on chariots, used more for transport than combat, aligns with Mycenaean frescoes depicting two-wheeled vehicles, while the absence of cavalry reflects the pre-Iron Age military landscape. Alliances, such as Troy's with the Amazons and Carians, echo Hittite diplomatic texts listing vassal states, suggesting Troy's regional influence. As Achilles re-enters the fray, his rampage killing Trojans in the Scamander River symbolizes the unleashing of divine wrath, a motif paralleled in Near Eastern epics like the Epic of Gilgamesh, highlighting cultural exchanges across the Eastern Mediterranean. The art, architecture, and technological achievements of the Iliad's world are woven into the narrative, offering glimpses of a sophisticated Bronze Age culture. The Shield of Achilles, crafted by Hephaestus in Book 18, is a masterpiece of ekphrasis, its concentric scenes of city life, agriculture, and war reflecting the intricate metalwork of Mycenaean artisans, as seen in the inlaid dagger from graves circle a Trojan architecture, with its well-built walls and Priam's palace, finds parallels in the multi-roomed structures of Troy VI, with their ashlar masonry and plastered interiors. Mycenaean palaces, like Pylos with its painted frescoes of griffins and battle scenes, showcase the artistic vibrancy described in the epic's feasting halls. Technological advances, such as bronze metallurgy, are central to the narrative, with weapons and armor described in loving detail matching artifacts like the Turin's bronze greaves. The Iliad's references to shipbuilding, as in the Achaean fleet, align with the Ulaburan wrecks evidence of advanced carpentry and seafaring. Cultural exchanges, evident in the epic's mention of Sidonian textiles and Thracian horses, are corroborated by finds of Canaanite jars and Baltic amber in Mycenaean contexts, pointing to a connected Mediterranean world. As the narrative reaches its peak with Achilles and Hector's fatal duel, the focus shifts to the human cost of war, with Troy's impending fall looming as a tragic inevitability. Interactions with neighboring civilizations shape the Iliad's geopolitical landscape, reflecting the interconnectedness of the late Bronze Age Eastern Mediterranean. The Trojans' allies, including the Lycians under Sarpedon and the Carians, mirror Hittite records of coalitions involving Walusa, likely Troy, as seen in the Alexandru Treaty. The Achaeans, too, draw on a network of allies, with contingents from Crete and Rhodes suggesting a maritime confederacy, supported by Mycenaean pottery distributions across the Aegean. The epic's mention of Egyptian and Ethiopian warriors, though likely anachronistic, hints at broader cultural awareness, possibly inspired by trade contacts evidenced by faience beads in Mycenaean tombs. The Iliad's portrayal of gift exchanges, like Glaucus and Diomedes swapping armor, reflects diplomatic practices documented in the Amarna letters, where gold and chariots sealed alliances. Troy's wealth, derived from controlling Hellespont trade routes, made it a target, with Hittite texts noting conflicts over Walusa's strategic position. As the war reaches its climax, the narrative focuses on Hector's death, a moment that crystallizes the epic's themes of mortality and honor, with Achilles pursued around Troy's walls, evoking the ritualized combat depicted in Anatolian reliefs. The peak period of the Trojan War, as depicted in the Iliad, centers on the dramatic confrontation between Achilles and Hector, a moment that encapsulates the epic's exploration of heroism and fate. Troy's territorial influence, extending to allies like the Dardanians, reflects its regional power, supported by archaeological evidence of Troy's expansive lower city. The Achaeans, despite internal divisions, mount a relentless siege, their efforts culminating in the ruse of the Trojan horse, absent from the Iliad but implied in its foreshadowing of Troy's doom. The epic's focus on individual Aristia moments of supreme valor parallels the warrior ethos of Mycenaean grave stels, which depict chariot battles and duels. The narrative's pacing slows to linger on Hector's farewell to Andromache, a poignant scene set against Troy's towers, evoking the domestic life preserved in Troy via's household pottery and loom weights. The death of Hector, struck down by Achilles' spear, marks the turning point, with Priam's subsequent plea for his son's body highlighting the universal grief of war, a theme resonant with Near Eastern laments like those found in Ugaritic texts. The Iliad's portrayal of this peak moment avoids glorifying victory, instead emphasizing the shared humanity of victor and vanquished, a perspective grounded in the archaeological record of shared material culture across Greek and Anatolian sites. The decline and transformation of Troy, though not fully depicted in the Iliad, are foreshadowed in the epic's closing books, with the city's fall implied as an inevitable consequence of Hector's death. Archaeological evidence from Troy Via shows signs of destruction: burnt layers, collapsed walls, and arrowheads dated to around 1180 BCE, aligning with the traditional timeline of the Trojan War. The Iliad's narrative, ending with Hector's funeral, leaves Troy's fate unspoken. Yet Hittite records suggest Walusa's decline amid regional upheavals, possibly linked to the Sea People's invasions documented in Egyptian inscriptions. The Achaeans, too, faced dissolution, with the epic hinting at their eventual dispersal, a fate corroborated by the collapse of Mycenaean palaces around 1200 BCE, as seen in the abandoned halls of Pylos and Mycenae. The Iliad's legacy endures through its oral transmission, shaping Greek identity and influencing later literature, from Virgil's Aeneid to modern retellings. Archaeological rediscovery, beginning with Schliemann's excavations and continued by Manfred Korfmann's geophysical surveys at Hisarlik, has revealed Troy as a real city, its layers a testament to resilience and rebirth. The epic's lasting significance lies in its exploration of human conflict and compassion, a narrative that transcends its Bronze Age origins to speak to universal truths. The story of the Iliad, rooted in the ruins of Troy and the vanished palaces of the Mycenaeans, remains a timeless reflection on the cost of war and the pursuit of glory. Its verses, preserved through centuries of recitation, continue to captivate, bridging the gap between myth and history. The plains of Troy, now silent, still whisper of heroes and their deeds.